Welcome to my channel. This is part 4 in a 5-part series on drafting a pattern for an 1810s muslin dress based on an extant garment in the V&A Collection. In this section, we will fit the dress, apply fabric properties, and add a button, placket, bias binding, and other finishing details. Let's get started. All right, so I have this dress, which has all of its pieces, and now we're ready to add some finishing details. And so the first step is to apply the actual fabric that we want the dress to be made out of. We made the whole dress using the default fabric because it's a lot faster to work that way, but now we are ready to apply the real fabric. So we want a cotton muslin. I'm opening up the property editor and the object browser. Once I have clicked fabric 1, I can scroll down to the very bottom under physical property. The preset right now is custom or, default, whatever it might be. And I'm actually going to go to cotton voile. And the reason is because these muslin fabrics that are here, they represent modern or contemporary muslin fabrics, not what muslin actually was in the early 1800s. So I think that as far as a fine sheer fabric of walls closer, you are also welcome, to open, right-click fabric 1 and go to fabric creator and see if you can find something closer. But I think this is giving the right effect and looking like our reference image. So let's see, we just want to make sure that applied cotton voile, and go ahead and press simulate. And you can see that, yes, we're getting a much softer silhouette out of this fabric than whatever the heck the default fabric is. So before I add any finishing details, I'm going to check the fit of this garment, make sure it's exactly what I want it to be, using a reference image here as an example. And one thing that I like to do is turn on the fit map. So that's right here in the 3D display options under this second roll of fabric, turn on fit map, also Alt 8, and it'll show me different places that there might be some issues. Something that's interesting is if there's just like a collision or if there's a lot of seams getting bunched together, sometimes it will show you that it doesn't fit like it does now. And to get an accurate sense of like what's really going on, I often have to switch to high res garment. So right over down here, if I click and hold this icon in the 3D toolbar and I can choose high res and it will give me different options. And if you know your computer won't run a particle distance of 5, like that's fine. You can go ahead and maybe put 10 in. Additional thickness, I like to keep at 0.5 and skin offset 0.1. Go ahead and click OK. And once this loads and simulates, we get a better sense of maybe what's going on here too. I also remember that the waistband is pinned to or tacked to the measurement of the avatar. And so that it's, kind of giving weirdness there too, because it is larger than the avatar and it's buckling a little bit. However, there's not really a way we can turn that off without everything sagging into oblivion, because Chloe thinks that this skirt is way heavier than it actually is. And so we'll leave it there for now. So again, I think this is really just a form of pinching of all of these things together. I don't see a reason why this would be maybe stressed in this way. Maybe it's pulling out that direction, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that for now. I'm more concerned with this fit in the back. I feel like we could definitely get better here. It feels like maybe it's too long and also too wide. I would like to kind of draw this in to keep these shoulder straps from falling off the back. So step 4 in this process is to make fitting adjustments as needed. And so yours is going to be different than mine is, but I'll show you what I'm going to do on mine, and maybe it'll help you fit your own. So first we're going to reduce the center back on the band back, the bodice back, and the waistband by about ½ inch. So that's actually going to be 1 inch total. So if I'm just going to go over to here and then select those with the edit pattern tool or the Z hotkey right here in the 2D toolbar. And I'm just going to select all these points and hit left on my keyboard twice, which I have it set to move in 0.25 inch increments or 1/4 inch increments. So that should kind of take care of that. And let's go ahead and simulate and see what that did. if you, it is really hard to work in the high res mode. So at any point, if you need to go back to low res mode, that's right here. So just click and hold low res, and then whatever. I like to keep the additional thickness collision the same, the skin offset the same, but the particle distance goes up, and then the quality of simulation goes up too. Okay, so I'm just help you move your strap back on your shoulder. All right, that helped reduce a lot of that nonsense that was there. What else can we do? Let's shorten the bodice front, like right here. And even throughout the front, because we're getting some more blousing. Like she's giving more than maybe she needs here over the bust. So maybe we shorten that. And then continue that through the side, because I feel like this is fitting really well, but this side seam, there's a lot of extra length. So I'm just going to select these 3 points here. So those are the 2 bottom, or I guess all 3 of the bottom points of the front, and then 1 of the back. And I'm just going to use my arrows again to move that up, but just like by 1/4 of an inch. We'll see what that does. All right. That actually smoothed that out really nicely, and it looks pretty good all the way around. And I think this kind of, it's just a matter of it's tacked to the avatar, and it's not happy about that. Okay, because there's no way that that's not going to fit. One last thing that I think might help is right here in my references, I have these 2 lines as perfectly straight. So I think I just want to reduce them maybe in the armpit, and I'm going to double check that this doesn't affect the sleeve, maybe to that. So it's just straight up and down as opposed to kind of giving more at the top, maybe over here as well. And then of course, making sure that these are still trued. So 3.4, 3.48, so that should be good. Simulate that. That'll just take a little bit out of there. Now I just need to make sure that that didn't ruin, because these are sewed to the sleeve. I'm going to check my sewing length, and yeah, it looks like there is something happened here. What do we got? We got 2.8, and then we have, 2.8. Oh, that's including like that somewhere. So what if I go to my edit sewing tool and I just move this guy over a little bit? Will that like solve my problem, or will it create more problems? No. Oh yes, let's move him over a little bit more. All right, so I essentially just evened out what was distributed under here, and since it wasn't that much, I'm not too worried about it. Okay, so this is still red here because it's gathered into here, which is why that's red. And then this is a gather, this is a gather, this is a gather. This, however, is not a gather. And so it made me realize that when I moved this in, I actually need to move this side into. So, oops. Let's go ahead and go back to the edit pattern tool, grab these 2 points, and then we moved that in by 1/2 of an inch. So I need to move this in by 1/2 of an inch as well. I'm not worried about the center back. I mean, I could if I really wanted to, but I'm not worried about it because it's just gathered in anyway. And if anything, it's just going to keep the fullness of the skirt and fit it to the waistband. So, okay, so now everything's red, but that's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask this. I'm still in the edit sewing tool, the B hotkey, which is right here in the 2D toolbar. I'm just going to move this here to that blue dot so I know that that's trued. And then I'll move this seam over there. That's the side bodice. And then at this side, I just have to make it the length it needs to be. And then he'll be trued. And then I can just extend the front here. And it doesn't really matter because the front is gathered anyway. So it's just going to shift it over a little bit. But let's go ahead and simulate. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Of course, we still have, this going on here, but I'm going to ignore it. Okay, so that looks a lot better. And then anything else that you see, you're welcome to adjust as well, but I think that this is a pretty good fit for now. I'm just going to double check it in high res garment just to see what it looks like that way, and then shift back to low res garment And I'll keep that at 15 for myself. You're welcome to put it at 20 if your computer is really slow. Go ahead and simulate and see what's going on. All right, that's the end of our fitting phase. That wasn't too bad. Now we can go ahead and add a closure to this garment. We're going to start by getting the Edit Pattern tool, or the Z hotkey, and we're going to click the back band here, shift click to get that back bodice as well, and then the back part of the waistband, and then also the back of the skirt. So we just have everything that is a part of center back is now selected, and then you right click the selection and then choose Offset Pattern Outline. And for the distance, we're going to make that a half of an inch. So 0.5 inches, extend, number of offsets 1. Let's actually create that internal line. And then everything else should be fine. So let's go ahead and click OK. Okay, so it's hard to see what that did, but here's our extension now there, and that's there. Before we click simulate, we're going to do a couple other things to make sure that it just simulates really beautifully. So let's go ahead and delete the center back lines here. So I went to the Edit Sewing tool, or the B hotkey, and I'm just going to click the center back line there on the waistband as well. And I'm not going to delete it on the skirt, actually. Instead, I'm just going to lower it by 12 inches. So it's going to have like a little opening there. So I'm just clicking the top. As I'm clicking and dragging, right click, type in 12. Great. That's going to lower that 12 inches so that she can actually get into her skirt. And then on the other side, I'm just going to click and drag it down 12 inches or to that like blue dot, and it'll lock there. So deleted the center back on the band, the bodice, and the waistband, and then lowered it on the skirt. And then since we offset, we actually have to extend all of the sewing lines. So extending that one on the waistband to there, extending that one there. That's this one here as well. Zoom in so I can grab him. There we go. And then up here, got to extend these there and there. Oop, perfect. Okay. And then down here. Great. So we've extended all that sewing. All the sewing should be trued up again. Now we can go ahead and add our buttons. And I'm going to work actually on this side of the garment because I'm going to put the buttons in first. I'm going to grab the button tool in the 3D toolbar. So right here, button. And I'm going to put mine on the internal line on the band. So I'm actually just going to right click that internal line, and it'll allow me to put a button exactly where I want. And I want it to be in the middle, and I know the band is 1 inch thick, so 0.5. Distance is 0 because distance is like the distance away from the line that I want, and I just want it to be on the line. The interval is 0.5 so that it starts, 0.5 inches from the top of the line. And then we're not going to add any more buttons, so we don't have to worry about that. And we can go ahead and click OK. And then for the one down here, we're going to click the internal line on the back bodice, but we want to make sure we click it near the top because that's the start of the line. It'll just put the button in the right spot if we start it up here. So right click the line near the top. And then this time, still the distance is 0. The interval is going to be 3.5, and that's just going to put it down here. I know it goes there because in my references, that's where I've seen the button goes, so that's why it's there. And there are only 2 buttons on the back of this dress, so we'll go ahead and click OK. And now we have the buttons. We can duplicate them to the other pattern as buttonholes. So I'm going to go to the Select Move Button tool right here in the 3D toolbar. And I'm just going to shift click both these buttons, right click the selection, and then say duplicate as buttonhole to symmetric pattern. So there you go. And it actually, Chloe's been doing a pretty good job kind of arranging everything to work. They've kind of figured out how people use this program, so that's nice. And let's go ahead now and fasten these buttons. So this is the Fasten Button tool. It's also in the 3D toolbar. Click that. You just have to click a button and then click the buttonhole it goes to. And then click the other button, click the other button hole it goes to. So right there. There we go. Now we've got the little lock symbol over here. We know that they are buttoned. So when we simulate this, Chloe's going to have to figure out like, okay, but which side goes on top, which side goes on the bottom. You're like, obviously the side with the button goes on the bottom. but CLO doesn't know that. So we're going to go to the Set Sublayer tool in the 2D toolbar right here. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and close out of my object browser and property editor to see better. All right, so right here, Set Sublayer, and I'm going to click the one with the button, and then click the one with the buttonhole, and I'm saying, oh, that right now it says it goes over. We're going to say it goes under, so like that. And then same here, that button should go under buttonhole, and so like that. All right, so now when we simulate, things should be okay. So I'm going to go, actually I'm going to click the any other tool just to kind of get out of that menu, and then press space to simulate, and we'll see what happens. Aha, very nice. And I wasn't able to do that set sublayer with the waistband because it's unfolded and there's no way for it to understand what I'm trying to mean. And I also didn't do it to the skirt just because the skirt is like overlapping itself in other ways, and I didn't want to confuse it. So this looks good, and the real skirt would have actually a buttonhole here. You're welcome to put one if you want, and then this whole like waistband is actually a casing. It's double layered, so there's a drawstring that goes through that casing and then comes out probably in a buttonhole like around on this top here, or an eyelet somehow. It comes out here and then we'll tie right here, like on that internal line here. So I thought about different ways to make a drawstring in CLO and decided that ultimately it was not worth the effort. So instead of doing that, we're just going to tack it. And so this is the tack tool in the 3D toolbar. Just click that, and you can click on the edge of here somewhere and then click near the internal line on this side. And when you simulate, it'll hold those two together as if it is drawstringed shut. You also have the option to add elastic into the top and the bottom of this waistband, but I found it to be really unstable because of how it's tacked to the avatar. So I just decided not to, and because of all of these gathers. So I decided at the end to just not do that, and maybe at the very end right before we render, but now is not the time for that. Okay, now it's time to think about how all of the edges of this garment are finished. So I believe that the neckline is 2 layers that are basically bagged out of each other. So that's how this edge is finished. We'll do that a little bit later. I think, again, the waistband is also 2 layers for that drawstring. But for the hem and of the sleeves and of the bottom, I decided that it looks like to me that this is some sort of bias binding along the hem here. So it just looks maybe thicker than it would be just if it was folded under. It also, you know, this hem goes around up a curve down here, and that gets kind of annoying when you're trying to hem, especially like right here. So I think that bias finish is going to be really nice. Yeah, here's what it looks like on the wrist too. So I don't really know for sure how this was finished. That's my approach, and so I'll show you how to do that now. So first we're going to offset an internal line on the hem of the sleeve as well as the hem of the skirt by 3/4 of an inch, and make sure you do grab all this piece down here that was offset as well. So just with the edit pattern tool or the Z hotkey, just shift click all of those lines, then right click and then choose offset as internal line, and we're just going to type 0.375 for 3/8 of an inch. Extend is good, and then go ahead and click OK. Now we have a place to sew our bias binding to, and now let's go ahead and draft it with the rectangle tool or the S hotkey that's right here in the 2D toolbar. And I'm just going to click anywhere in the 2D window. We'll start with the hem here, and the width, actually, we want to be the length of this internal line. So I'm going to exit out of here, go back to my edit pattern tool just to click that internal line, shift click to grab it, and it says it's 36.138 altogether. Following my mouse, it calculates whatever I click. So I'm going to go back to and then type 76.138. Okay, and then height we want to be 0.375, and then go ahead and click OK. That's our bias binding for the hem. And then for the sleeve, it's the same thing. I'm just going to click that internal line, and it's about 8 inches. So going back to the rectangle tool, type 8, height is 0.375. Okay. So real bias binding is of course made with 4 layers that are folded into themselves twice, but that is also a really big ask for CLO. And so I'm only just doing 1 layer and then sewing it in place, and it's still going to give some weight to the edge of that hem. It's going to make the hem look like it has thickness and is more finished. And when we're going to the rendering step next in the next tutorial, it'll actually increase the opacity in the hems. So it's not true to life, but it's going to give the feeling of true to life. And it's also asking us to make a decision now of how we want to finish the edges, so that we can know, how much hem allowance we need to add and things like that. I also just had a thought that this width of this cuff is 8 inches. Can she actually get it off her hand? Who's to say? Maybe it should have a placket, but that's for another time. Okay, to sew these in place, let's use the free sewing tool, or the M hotkey, and that's right here in the 2D toolbar. Oh, right over here. And I'm just going to click the top of the skirt internal line right here. And then I'm going to go all the way over to the other edge here and click there, and then click along the top of the bias tape like that. The reason why I'm not just using, the segment sewing tool is because it's going through multiple segments, and it just seemed easier this way. Oh, you got to make sure it doesn't follow that wrong. Fun fact, the first direction you start moving your mouse once you click is going to be like the way that this path is going to follow. So you do have to kind of follow it with your cursor if it's not clear where it's going. So I just clicked the bottom hem of the skirt, and now I'm clicking the bottom of the bias binding there, and that's sewn into place. And then we're going to repeat the same on the top here. Great. So very simple, just sewing that where we want it to go. Now, before we put this in place, let's go ahead and duplicate it with symmetric sewing. So I'm going to the transform pattern tool, the A hotkey, and I'm going to click this bias binding, click this one down here. So shift click both of those, and then Control or Command D to duplicate with symmetric sewing. And I'll just put these over here so they're ready to go. And then also, because this is bias binding, we will need to make sure that the grain line is at 45 degrees. So with the same tool, the transform pattern tool, I'm just going to shift click both of those pieces, open my property editor, and then under grain direction where it says 0, I'm just going to type 45, and that's going to shift the grain on both of those pieces. I can see it when I open the texture editor. Those are now at a 45-degree angle, which will allow them to stretch and move around the curves of the garment. Okay, now let's go back to that the transform pattern tool, or I guess we're still on it, and shift click all of these pieces, and then you can go ahead and right click them in the 3D window and say superimpose over. And that's just going to put them exactly where we sewed them to. Yay, just like that. It's following all the curves. That's so exciting. And now that they're in place, we can sew the edges together. So going to the segment sewing tool, or the N hotkey right here in the 2D toolbar, I'm just going to go ahead and sew that side to that side, and also sew these center fronts together. The reason why we didn't do this earlier is because once you start sewing these types of things to each other, the superimpose over gets really confused. It's like, wait, you want to be superimposed over yourself? And that's not the case. So that's why we wait until it's in place to sew those there. Great. So this is really, really close. We're almost there. In fact, I'm just going to simulate to make sure everything kind of settled into place. Okay, not bad. And the last thing that we're going to do here, and I made this the last thing because it is the least stable thing that we are going to do, is duplicate these pieces here as clones. So all of these bands and the waistband, we're just going to shift click to select all of those. I'm going to right click them in the 2D window over here, and then I'm going to choose layer clone under. It's going to make a clone of all these pieces. I'm just going to click somewhere else in the 3D window. And so it essentially, it duplicated all these pieces and put them underneath, which is exciting. What it also did was it sewed them all together all the way around, and it made all of the seam lines turned so that they'll stay flat. And then this is also cool. It makes the buttons here, actually it tells them to go through 2 layers, which is great, except that it's still not very stable. So let's see when I simulate what happens, if it like stays, if it's good. You guys good? It's like, yeah, I don't know about this tack down here. So that might be something I need to readjust. I don't think it's going to figure itself out. So I'm actually going to undo that. Otherwise, it seemed like yeah, we're kind of bubbling out there. It just doesn't love how many things are being sewn to how many other things. But this is a really important step for the next tutorial when we're doing rendering, because again, we're going to want to see that double layer of opacity. And it helps us, it reminds us that we will need to cut these pieces out of the fabric. So if you're using the print layout tool, it's going to remind you that you do need a little bit of extra fabric for those finishing details. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it as it is for now. And this is basically a completely patterned dress, which is very exciting. And the next tutorial will look at how to render it, get really good images of it to share with your directors, with your designers, or whoever might, or just to share your work in your portfolio in general. So I'll see you then. And thanks for following along, you guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.